Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast. Today we're talking about the Resident Evil 4 chainsaw demo, the Suicide Squad game apparently being delayed to 2024. And The Last of Us Season 1 is over, so we have some Season 2 news to discuss. And, if the stars align, we're going to talk about PSVR2, but it might not happen, folks, so stick around to find out. I'm your host, Patrick, and joining me, as always, is my we call him the sweet dumpster boy.
Wow. Whoa, I'm back. I'm back, baby. I'm back.
How did it? Yeah, you were gone last week. We had friend of the show, Kayla from JK Games, sub in your stead.
Honestly,
how does it feel to be back with this fucking show, this garbage truck on fire?
One, it makes me feel a little sad because she did such a great job and honestly did better than me. So I do kind of feel bad for everyone who's listening. I'm not her. But no, I am 100%. It seems 100% back to normal. I think it was like a flu or something. I don't know. But I'm alive. So
hey,
you're stuck with me.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters is that you're alive. And, I love having you here because I can say, I can make advances on you. I can't make advances on Kayla.
Sure.
I don't,
that'd be kind of weird.
It'd be really weird. And I want to make advances on you.
Thanks.
So, Cayman, we have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, as we are right now on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so you're notified when we go live so you can be part of the conversation. Cayman, we wrapped up season 1 of The Last of Us. Oh, my phone is making noise. We wrapped up season 1 of The Last of Us last night on this very Twitch channel.
It's true.
Covering episode 9. We did a deep dive on the finale, Look for the Light. And coincidentally, that is also the episode that hit the feed of Save Trash Cinema this week because as we discussed, and as the folks knew from last week, you were under the weather.
It's true. It's true. Don't worry, though. We will be back as strong as we've ever been, or we will be back as drunk as we've ever been when we release our St. Paddy's Day episode next week, covering everyone's favorite Leprechaun series, Leprechaun. And we will be covering, if you guys, I don't know if anyone remembers Leprechaun, the last year's St. Paddy's Day episode where we did Leprechaun. Well, guess what? We're doing Leprechaun too.
You don't remember it. That's for sure.
You're fucking better believe that edit was the weirdest thing I've ever done, which I was like, I don't remember saying any of these words. And there was a moment where I was like, I feel really awkward listening to myself just belligerently drunk, screaming.
I remember so vividly being like, I was drinking, but I didn't drink nearly as much as you and Mike did on that episode. And I remember I was so scared of what that podcast was going to end up being the sober one, and it ended up being great.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this one for this year, while still scared, as I often am for Save Trash Cinema, but I am excited to get back to that. Cayman, we have an exciting show today. We have a bit of a wild card potentially happening. Friend of the show, Grey Thompson, who was going to be on today to talk about PSVR2, having some technical difficulties, as is often the case in today's world. We got EMPs going off left and right, people, internet going down, things not working. There might be a point in which this show, Grey busts through the wall like a fucking Kool-Aid man, and I'll be thrilled if he does. But if he isn't able to make it, we're going to circle back in the near future, underline bold near future, to discuss PSVR2 because I'm itching to hear some hands-on impressions of PSVR2. But in the meantime, why don't we talk about what we've been playing? Cayman, if you would let me, I would love to start.
Sure.
So you and I have both been playing the same thing, which we're going to talk about. But I also want to talk about something I've been watching. And that's Super Mario World, the complete series. If you're not watching the video, I'm showing the DVD case, the collector's edition DVD case, the 2-disc set. I was chilling at home one day. I work from home, and I get a text from Cayman, and he says, check the mail. which is never a good thing. So I get my slippies on. I walk out to the mailbox. I open it up. I can feel that it's a box. So I was like, okay, we're either working with a DVD or we're working with a game here. And it was a DVD, Super Mario World, the complete series. You know, to get me ready for the Super Mario Bros. Movie coming out in a few short weeks, starring Chris Pratt in every role. And I this shit is unhinged, Cayman. It's like, you know, when we were kids, or I mean, Goodwill still exists, but like, you know, when we were kids going to Goodwill and you'd be like checking out and there'd be that like the VHS or the DVD bin with just the most random fucking shit. This is a fucking Goodwill find. Like, this is something that you would find in a Goodwill. I've only watched one episode. I watched a little bit of a second episode, but I'm just gonna say I've watched one episode. And for some reason, and I'm excited to see whether or not this continues throughout the series. But for some reason, Mario, Luigi, and all the other characters are like in prehistoric times. There's like they're in like a caveman city, and like Mario and Luigi have tasked themselves with like bringing them technology and like introducing like wheels to them and shit.
What?
It is like, it is so fucking weird. It is like the most not Mario thing I've ever seen, but Yoshi's there, Bowser's there. Like, Bowser is still the bad guy, and Bowser's like coming in with a character I've never heard of. I don't even remember their name, but it's supposed to be like one of his kids. But it's not one of the main ones that we normally see. And he's just trying to stop them from progressing their society for some weird reason. There's this character named Ooga who just says Ooga Booga. That's the only words he says. And it is just, if you have the means to watch this show, it's really, really so strange. Like, it makes no sense. It feels as if it is not supposed to be a Mario show, and they were just like, let's just make it a Mario show. Like,
I love it.
It's really strange.
So the way that this ended up coming about was that there was like a joke post from Twitter user Wario64, who a lot of times he'll post like ad spots to be like, especially during when it was like the heyday of the console shortage, he would post to be like, hey, there's Xboxes live now on Walmart.
That's how I got my PS5.
Yeah, that's how I got mine too. And so, you know, always follow him and, you know, love his shit. And so he posted like a meme post where it was like, there's season 1 of the Mario Brothers TV show is on DVD. So I was like, oh fuck, I got it. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's not shipping for like 3 months. I was like, fuck that. And it just so happened that I looked down and it was like Super Mario Bros. TV show, the collector's edition for $6.99. I was like, well, that's like three of my favorite numbers, 6, 9, and 9.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I was like, I'm not gonna get it for myself. I'm gonna get it.
Of course not. You're a giver. You're a giver.
Well, yeah, you know. So, but you know, when something is, you know, $6.99,
yeah,
we're both giving and taking here. Okay, I give to you the gift of this DVD, and then you give to me a review of it.
Yes, and I'll at some point something deranged will be in your mailbox too. But so I'm reading the back of this because they don't do any sort of exposition in this show. I'm learning now that this takes place in Dinosaur Land, which I guess Bowser is the king of. So that's why it's like a caveman society, because it's Dinosaur Land. But it's like, it's so fucking weird. So yeah, Super Mario World, the complete series, I guess $6.99 on Amazon.
Get it while you can, because that shit's selling like hotcakes. I have a feeling.
My absolute favorite thing about it is it feels like this is a bootleg of it, because when you boot it up, at least in my copy, maybe there's like a scratch in the disc or something. It's like, check out these other shows from In Circle Entertainment, and there's nothing, like there's no ads for it. And then you go to the menu, like you're watching episodes. There's no credits. It's just like, here's a MP4 file. Essentially, it's great.
Honestly, I kind of love that that's the case, because like you don't have to deal with looking at credits.
Yeah,
that's great. Like the worst part of watching a TV show that's on the physical is you have to go through the credits every time. You don't need that shit. Just let me live.
Yeah, it's great. But to actually talk about games we've been playing and not a show based, I don't even want to say based on a game that resembles a game. We've both been playing the Resident Evil Chainsaw demo. This released last week. Friend of the show, Han, in our Discord, which we have a Discord that I always forget to talk about, let us know about the Capcom Spotlight thing that was happening last week, which we are not going to talk about this week because there really wasn't much news from it. But that the Chainsaw demo dropped, which was just a really cool callback because way back when this originally came out, there was a Chainsaw demo. It is, if you've played the game, it is the first level or the first area of Resident Evil 4 where you're in the village. The Chainsaw Man comes in, but it's in this sweet 4K 60 frames fucking Resident Evil 4 remake. And we've been playing it. Cayman, what do you think?
Dude, this shit's hard as fuck. So, how did I beat this as a kid? Like, was it this hard when we were kids?
So I think it was hard when we were kids, but an interesting thing that I noticed, because as I've said several times on the show, and you have too, big fan of RE2 Remake.
Yeah.
This game feels very different from that. Like it doesn't really feel like the RE2 Remake. It feels like you can crouch, you can like stealth to a degree in this game. It seems very clear that like you probably couldn't stealth your way through this section, but like you can at least pick off a couple of the enemies. And I wonder if they're ramping it up just for the sake of the demo, but it is hard. Did you play it once or did you play it more than once?
I had to play it multiple times to be able to get through it.
Let me reframe. Did you, once you finished it, did you play it again?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So there's an ultra, I forget what it's called. It's like Chainsaw Massacre mode that it's like it's an RNG. So like as you're playing it, it'll randomly be like, do you want to try this mode? And I tried it. And it is so much harder. And if you die, you die. Like you don't get to start over. You have to wait until it asks you again.
I was like,
but it is tough.
Chainsaw Man has a flaming chainsaw apparently.
See, I didn't even get that far.
Holy shit.
I died right before getting into the village in the lead up because you get less ammo and there's like double enemies from like in the demo when that first enemy comes down the stairs, 4 enemies come down the stairs. And so I realized, oh, I'm not supposed to kill them all. I'm supposed to run. And so I think the part that I died, I was probably just supposed to run. It's probably just a survive, not kill everything demo. But I've played the demo like 7 or 8 times because it is, while it is really hard, it is so fun.
Yeah.
And I found out there you can get the TMP, the submachine gun from Resident Evil 4. I saw this online. If you, before you open the gate, if you clear your inventory, you go in, you hang a right, and you kind of follow all like, you just stay to the right. Essentially, there's a grate. You might have noticed it when you played it. There's like a ladder that has a grate over it. Do you remember that? That is opened if you drop everything in your inventory. You go down there, you pick up the TMP. There's like 150 bullets and a bunch of gold, and then going forward, it's automatically in your inventory. So then the demo is a lot easier when you get to start with the TMP and the pistol.
That's cool.
What I didn't try, because I also on that last playthrough when I had the TMP, I also came across the shotgun. What I didn't try is in another playthrough, will I start with the shotgun as well? Not sure.
You don't.
But I would assume you don't. Okay.
You don't. Yeah, no, you don't. Well, at least I don't think you do. Maybe. I don't know. What I will say is that when you, because I did try this out. This is actually the way that I ended up beating it. So I was like, what the fuck? Because like in the original way that you're supposed to, is like there's like a particular house that you're supposed to go to. Like you're supposed to board up the house and like try to survive inside of it. And then when everyone finally breaks through, you get it triggers the Chainsaw Man. Right. So come to find out, what I went was like, why? I was like, man, this shit is so fucking hard. Apparently, if you just run around and like then it'll trigger him, but you don't have. So when you enter the house, it doubles the amount of enemies.
Okay.
So I do kind of like the way that they kind of design that. I think it's pretty cool. And so when I did that way, like once it triggered, I ran in the house, grabbed the shotgun, grabbed the grenade, kind of posted myself up and was able to make it through at that point. Because the whole thing is like, you aren't supposed to kill all these enemies. I will say one thing I do distinctly remember though, of playing the original RE4 was going back in after beating the game when you can unlock, like, I think like you start off like if you max something out, you get the Tommy gun.
Yeah.
And it's like unlimited ammo, but you can also, if you beat the game again on with using the Tommy gun, then like New Game Plus Plus, you get unlimited rocket launchers,
Fucking
and you can
yes.
put Ashley in a suit of armor and just
So
fire.
good.
You just like send her off as bait and just keep firing rockets at her. So like the thing that I like distinctly, like I'm playing through, I'm like, man, this is so fucking hard. But I'm also thinking like, man, I cannot wait to do New Game Plus with like just
because they gotta bring that back.
Yeah, you just
There's no
fucking
way
wipe
they
everyone out. One of my favorite things is there's a YouTuber, Dante Ravioli,
Okay.
who does a lot of like challenge runs for Resident Evil. And one of his challenge runs was like, can you kill the Chainsaw Man without actually attacking at all? So what
just
you
like
can
defending and parrying or whatever?
you just no. So he does it on like, this was like before the demo came out. But basically the way he did it was if you get them to like come to the door, you just kick the door open and it damages him. And so he's just sitting there repeatedly kicking this door open and just
That's
like kills
funny.
the guy. And I'm like, that's amazing.
That is
like
amazing.
I will say, like, I was watching a video earlier, I think it was from GameSpot, where there are like 8 things you need to know about RE4, the remake. And it was like things that are different. And these are things that I was like, I had no idea. And there was some things I had no idea before I even played the demo that I was like, I don't know if I like this as much. The first thing I did was like, I were distinct because I was like, it was like a reflex going back, right?
Wasn't it? It was so weird.
And so the first thing I do is like shoot the dude's kneecap out, come up with my knife, slice, 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 kill him. And I'm like, yeah, man, this feels so good. And then the next enemy, I go to do the same thing, and my knife goes ka-chink. I was like, oh, you fucking
no way. Me. My knife never broke.
Yes. Your knife can break, and you have to repair your knife at merchants. And you can apparently you can upgrade the knife with as you play. So it's like has more durability, does more damage, whatever. But yes, the knife does break. Another thing I noticed, gunpowder, which was not in the original game. And I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be they're really
so I figured out
in this shit.
I figured out with the gunpowder, if you find I see a face.
Let's fucking go.
Let's see if we hear him.
Let's go.
My ears, though.
So one thing that I was able to do once, if you get the gunpowder, there's another thing that you have to find. I forget what it's called, but if you combine them, you can create ammo with the gunpowder, which is cool. Gray, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can always hear you.
Oh,
now I can see you. My life
and we can see you.
I'm on my phone. I feel so stupid. This is awful. Thank you. No. I'm so sorry, you guys. I could not figure it out on my computer, which is ironic for what I'm here to talk about. It's actually going to play into what I'm going to talk about, but I'm not happy about that. Oh my God.
You're all good. Well, we've been talking about the RE4 demo, which you've also been playing.
Yes.
What do you think?
First of all, it looks so good. It looks so good. I kind of struggle when they do these. Sometimes part of me really wants a remake rather than a remaster rather than a remake. Does that make sense? Like I just want to see games look better, and we'll get to that with PSVR2 in a minute too. But I just want to see like upgrades sometimes. Sure. They've changed some stuff about RE4, but I think for the better.
Yeah,
it looks so good. That's easy, right? But like to add. There was a stealth kill in there, which was nice. I enjoyed that, right? I didn't like how the first person you fought wasn't just a villager. He was already mutated.
Sure.
But they add that into sort of the combat loop where if you don't kill them fast enough, then they can mutate. The AI is way smarter. And I really kind of enjoyed how they upgraded all of it.
Yeah.
And I say that because I didn't love I love Resident Evil. I pre-ordered the original Resident Evil. I'm way older than you fucks. And I went to my friend. I remember getting this game and the dog busts through the window in horrible fidelity, terrible resolution, right? And it scared the shit out of us. And we were laughing we'd never seen anything like that. The dialogue, all that stuff, that was new to us. Resident Evil 2, the remake, and Resident Evil 3 were way more like scary and terrifying for me. I didn't
Sure.
enjoy it. I didn't finish them, and I have no problems with that. But I'm super excited for this one because it feels everything but the camera to me feels exactly right. I'm really excited. I wasn't excited until I played the demo.
Hell
The
yeah.
demo kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Gray, you and I were talking beforehand yesterday also, like something about there was just this weird like nostalgic rush with this demo. Like there have been demos for things recently, but there haven't been demos for things recently that I've cared about. So this is like one of my first demo experiences in like a really long time. So it was really cool like having that, because they used to be such a huge piece. You'd buy a game specifically for the demo disc because you didn't give a shit about this game, but I just want to play the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo like
I was
that.
gonna
So
say,
that it was a
you're
really
older than
cool.
I thought, which is good. I mean, demos used to be a part of life. Like
Yeah.
Doom 2 started, or was it Doom? One of them was shareware.
Doom.
It was
yeah.
a part of life. And it used to be a big part of my life, including on consoles. I haven't been excited about a demo in a long time.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for this one to hit, man. And it did. Look, it's not perfect. I really think the camera doesn't make a lot of sense the way it zooms in. It doesn't need to do that at all.
Sure.
In fact, the way, look, Resident Evil 4, the original, part of the process that people learned to do to get really efficient and quick in the game was to corral all the enemies together and then just blast them kind of in a line. Or like in the demo, in that area, you would bring them up onto the tower. If you go in the tower now, the floor collapses, right?
You fucking
The enemies
threw
are,
me.
it's awesome.
Yeah. It was
I
really
think
cool.
that's good. And but the camera doesn't really seem to fit it very well. Hopefully that's adjustable. Again, it's a demo, so I'm not really upset about it. I'm really, really look, I was not excited about it. Now I'm super stoked. That's what a demo is supposed to do, right?
Yeah,
that's the purpose of it.
That was their goal. Yeah, no, I was gonna buy this game, but I had such a good time with the demo that I like at the end when it's like buy this game. I was like, no, I'll pre-order right now. Like that.
Yeah.
This demo, I had so much fun with it that I'm gonna go ahead and pre-order it.
Okay, so I to your point, Gray, about the camera and all of that. That's one thing I had when I played the God of War. Was like the God of War reboot.
Yeah, 2018.
Was like, yeah, in 2018.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
You're fine.
That's God of War 4, and I don't know why they didn't call it that. Resident Evil, the one thing they've done that nobody can, to me, complain about is they've just gone 1, 2, 3, 4 through 8. 8
Sure.
Resident Evil games. I love it. You know what you're getting. God of War, like now you can't even tell them about the original that was record-breaking, trend-setting, everything. Like it's so dumb. God of War 4.
So the thing is with that, like when I first booted up God of War 4, for me when I booted it up, I was like, this feels wrong. Like this doesn't feel right. And it took me a little bit of time to like adjust to the new way Kratos works and like the new gameplay mechanics. So I 100% understand what you mean by this, because you're right. Like there was so many things that like were instinct where I was like, okay, this is so familiar. I know what I'm doing. But then there's so many things that are just so like just slightly different enough that I'm like, okay, this feels weird. But I'm like, I'm actually, I think, more excited about that because I'm like, I'm actually excited to like play this game again, but it's going to be like almost through brand new eyes.
Yeah.
And like, that's like so fucking exciting to me.
Yeah. I replayed RE4 on my Switch a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago.
Sounds about
and had a great time with it. So I was, while I've been super excited about Resident Evil 4 Remake, there has been that like slight trepidation. Like, what if I pick it up and I'm like, I just did this. So this, like, I had did the exact same thing. Went to the tower, floor fell through me. I'm like, awesome. They're giving me some curveballs, and so yeah, I'm very excited about that. Also, shout out to Chocolate de Mongo in the chat, friend of the show, Mondo. How you doing, buddy? We need to bring you back soon. And I see that the aforementioned Solid Snake in your in those emojis. I have not seen those before. Is your dinner ready, Gray, from your microwave?
Don't get me. It's been a hell of a day, dude. That was my door. Even my door's mad at me today. It's that kind of day.
Well, why don't we jump into the show proper by talking about a little news before we start hearing all about the PSVR2. A couple weeks ago, Suicide Squad we got a 15-minute deep dive into this game that is being made by Rocksteady, long celebrated developer behind the Arkham series. And there are very, very reputable rumors that that game is being delayed and maybe to next year. So I'm pulling from Tom Ivan at VGC. Tom writes, Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League's anticipated delay could be bigger than previously claimed. On Thursday, a Bloomberg source claimed Warner has decided to push the title from its previously announced May release date into the second half of 2023. Following the report, which Warner has yet to officially comment on, Giant Bomb reporter Jeff Grubb, aka Jeffy Grubb, said a reliable source had told him that Rocksteady's game may not arrive until next year. Jeff says, I don't want to cause a panic or anything, but I've heard it's not even coming this year. I'm hearing 2024. Earlier this evening, I heard they're like, this is a delay-ass delay. This is a bigger delay than is even being put out there. We'll see, he added. That stuff is hard to nail down for sure. I'll say that this source has always been a very good one. It was originally planned to release last year, and then last May, it was pushed back into this spring, and in December, it was announced to be coming May 26th, and now there is no new release date. Gentlemen, what is happening to this game?
Okay, so I'll just jump right in and tell you exactly where my headspace is. The first thing is like, we need more time to polish the game. That's bullshit. This game is polished. This game looks, gameplay wise, might not look like what people want, but you can't say this game does not look polished.
Yes, I agree.
What you can say is that this game just looks exactly like Avengers. And this brought up like a huge moment for me where I was like, we've seen a bunch of games be canceled this year, games that have been out for the last few years. All of them are live service games.
Right.
When you look, especially from WB's eyes, right? They just had, and whether or not you like it or you don't like it, Hogwarts Legacy has sold fucking gangbusters.
Yeah.
As of right now, like, and this is like the info we have is like, I think 2 weeks old at this point, has already surpassed 12 million copies.
I'm going to be dead ass wrong on our bet that we
is outpaced Elden Ring, guys.
That's amazing. Yeah. That makes me happy. I had no idea. That's thrilling. That's great news.
So my thing is, we see all these live service games being canceled. This game is a games as a service. This is a Marvel's Avenger, just DC, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think WB, when the fan backlash came through and was like, we don't want a game like this, that they are taking this shit back to the drawing board and they are nerfing shit. I don't foresee this game coming until next year.
I wonder, because like if it's being pushed to next year, because like you can only change so much, right? If it's coming out within the next, let's say 12 to 15 months.
Yeah.
So, because my biggest thing, like I will say that 15-minute deep dive got me the most interested in this game that I had been to date, because I was very cold on it when it was first revealed. Like, I don't want to be the Suicide Squad. I want to be fucking the Justice League. If I'm going to be a DC character, I want to be the Justice League personally. And then we saw that first like cinematic trailer and I was like, not my vibe. Love Rocksteady. I'll probably try it, but I'm not excited for this game. Mm-hmm. It does, like, to me, it looked lowercase f fun. And I make the distinction because like there's the games as a service aspect to it, but also more so my biggest qualm with what I saw was you're playing as Captain Boomerang, you're playing as King Shark, and all of them have guns, which are things that those characters don't usually use. So I wonder if what they're changing is the gunplay aspect of it and introducing mechanics that make sense for the characters. It makes sense for Harley Quinn to use a gun. It makes sense for Deadshot to use a gun. It doesn't make sense for Captain Boomerang to use a gun. So like, I wonder if they're going to introduce like a set of boomerangs that you use for him, because you can't like totally change the gameplay or like, so yeah, I don't know. I'm so interested to see what this delay means, but Gray, I'm interested. Is this a game that you've been following along much with?
You say you can't change the gameplay. Why not? Maybe that, I'm with Cayman. Maybe that's exactly what they're changing. Maybe they're going way, way back. Like to your point, it's not just machine guns, but they can also fly, basically, right? I mean, they can jump like crazy. Like it sort of has it resembles some of the Batman stuff, but Batman couldn't do all this. It looks
Yeah.
like superheroes. And when it's a guy with a shark head, look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. To be fair, I grew up kind of reading Marvel and Image comics way more than DC, but we all fell in love with the Batman series. It feels a little too bit. I'll keep this simple. Whenever there's a game that's delayed now, I kind of appreciate that because it means they're trying to do something on purpose. And
Sure.
we'll get to that with the PSVR title in a minute. It's releasing this week that was supposed to be a launch title, but like No Man's Sky, man, that was a blemish because of how it released when it was released, in spite of what they did later, right?
Sure.
Like that they never really fully recovered from. And if they're doing this for a big, like blockbuster IP like Suicide Squad, part of me is like super optimistic about it, right? I'd rather see a game release that's like you mentioned Hogwarts. The one thing you haven't heard of Hogwarts is like it's falling apart. Like I keep falling off my broom and the game like I haven't heard of fidelity issues like that.
Yeah.
If they can fix it and get the gameplay right too, I don't care how long it takes. I really don't.
To your point about Hogwarts, that was a game that was delayed several times, and the polish. I mean, I haven't played it yet, but like it seems like the polish is there. So like I totally agree with you. Like a delay can only be a good thing for this game. I'm so curious to see what that means because so often it seems like a game is delayed not because of feedback externally. It's from feedback internally. It's from like, hey, conversations that we've not been a part of as the consumer. It's just that like, hey, we're not ready. Like we need more time. But this one, they are specifically saying, you didn't like what you saw, so we'll be back. It's like, which is an exciting thing. Like they're listening to the consumer, but yeah, I'm super interested to see what this can mean for this.
And I think the other thing too, and something we don't need to leave out of this conversation is Crystal Dynamics. I mean, you like the what they're really known for is Tomb Raider, and they took Tomb Raider, which was a series that was floundering at the time. I don't know if a lot of people remember that, but like Tomb Raider was dead. Like people didn't want to play Tomb Raider anymore. And then they put out 3 stellar games, right? And then the next game is Marvel's Avengers. And that game, I love the story of it, but that game sucked.
It was not.
I mean, everyone agrees. Like there's no one out there's like, Cayman, you're wrong. Like everyone agrees that the story was really cool. And then the actual game itself sucked. So the thing is like you have Rocksteady, who's just released banger after banger, and now they're at the point now where they have their own. And now it's like, do we do what Crystal Dynamics did, and do we release a game that could potentially tank us?
Sure.
Because what is Crystal Dynamics doing right now?
Yeah, and also Rocksteady is owned by Warner Brothers. That's why they're doing a DC based game, and we all know the state of Warner Brothers lately.
Just like Prince.
But yeah, but also if you think about it too, it's like, okay, well, we just had an absolutely banger of a release with Hogwarts Legacy, and now we have capital in our that we can essentially use. Like we can delay this game. It'll be okay. Also, we really don't need to have another Gotham Knights situation, which like I played Gotham Knights. I enjoyed what I played of it. There were issues I started to see later in the game where I was like, okay, I can definitely now start to see where people are having a lot of hangups here. It is redundant. The traversal is not very fun, but like there's good parts of that game. And it's like, we can't have that again. And so we now see that, and guess what? Hogwarts Legacy, Gotham Knights was somewhat like a games as a service too.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, well, we now know people don't really care. It seems like the gamers themselves are like, yeah, okay, we've kind of passed this. We will always have our Fortnite. We will always have our Apex Legends. We'll always have our Call of Duty. But like, we want like single player games. We want games that like function when you're just one player.
Yeah.
And
that was a big thing with the latest info about it was even in single player, it's an online you have to be online to play the game, which I bet that's something that they'll change. Yeah. Because and to your point too, Cayman, like that with we can't have another Gotham Knights. I guarantee you, we don't know what the budget is for Suicide Squad, but I guarantee you the budget for Suicide Squad is so much bigger than the budget for Gotham Knights. You can just tell from like the graphical fidelity of the game. Like it's probably a game that they've put millions of more dollars into. So I bet the stakes are higher to actually sell the game because the more money you put in, the more you expect to make out of it. So Interesting to see. We'll definitely keep tabs on this one as we get more info. But what an interesting thing.
Why couldn't you, to your point, Cayman, just make a game about Robin or Harley Quinn or even the shark guy? I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
King Shark.
King
I like
Shark,
Shark
of
Guy.
course.
So you were
I do too.
shockingly close by guessing
Shark
Shark
Guy,
Guy
Lava Woman.
to King Shark.
We have
You know, to
Robert
be fair,
Rodriguez's-
I call Cayman King Shark in bed, so sometimes I get a little confused about where
Yeah.
else to use the term. But
When you have a fin the size of his and those teeth, I mean, come on.
hey, look, if you made a video game about him by Rocksteady and it was just about him and followed, like, I'd pay more
Yeah.
attention. I
That'd
don't know.
be
It feels like they're trying too hard, maybe. I don't know. And especially after Gotham Knights, that's where I like where you brought that up, Cayman. Like, it felt like a misstep more than like a total accident or mistake the way some people portrayed it to be. It wasn't a disaster, right? But
Yeah.
and I don't think this is going to be a disaster either. But why are there four? Is it four different characters that all kind of have some crazy abilities rather than something that's more focused?
You get
Like that's
four
what Batman
characters.
was. It was real personal.
Yeah.
4 characters at launch, and then they will be dropping individual characters after. And this sounds just like fucking Marvel's Avengers.
It sure does. Who are they going to fucking drop? Polka Dot Man? Like that's why
that'd be dope as
that's
shit.
why I
Well,
don't-
if they did it right.
Yeah, whatever.
Solomon
Something.
Condiment King.
Oh God.
Right?
Look, we brought him here to talk about PSVR2.
Oh no.
Let's talk about the PSVR2. Gray, I have been hotly anticipating this conversation because I just within a short arm's reach of me is the PlayStation VR1, something that I did not. Oh, it's so pretty. For if you're just listening,
So
go over
gorgeous.
to the YouTube and see it. And oh, it's so pretty.
It is worth noting that it's gorgeous. It looks
is a
like
gorgeous piece of
Japanese, like a
How
a
heavy
nice,
is it?
It's almost as heavy as the PSVR one. It's really not that different.
Okay. So yeah, I own the PSVR 1, but it was a piece of hardware that I used a lot for a couple weeks, and then it collected dust so much so that I gave it to my brother to have for multiple years, and he just gave it back to me a few weeks ago, and I've still not plugged it back in. So I want to hear general impressions. I kind of want to just like hand it over to you and let you monologue as much as you want about it, and we'll interject with questions. But my biggest question now, knowing that you also had PSVR 1, how big of an improvement is it from the first one?
I have to start by saying I don't just have PSVR 1. I loved it. Like I still love it. There are so many experiences that are unique to PSVR 1 that I still would say to this day, depending on who you are, it's worth it. Like I can definitely still see value in a PSVR 1, even if you're playing it on a PS5. I swear to God, it did so many things right with so many things in its software library. VR's come a long way. Look, that was 6 years ago, I think, right? Maybe 5, but it's come a long way since then. But that really felt like bleeding edge at the time. Like we're gonna get better. And I guess that's where I have to talk about PSVR 2, where I thought it was going to be that next step. And it's really it is in terms of hardware and image fidelity. But like you look at your cell phone, I mean, 2 years ago, you were taking pictures at 9 megapixels? You coward. You sit at that table. Like, no, it's plenty, right? There's sort of this limiting, what's the term I'm looking for? It just doesn't. PSVR 1 wasn't quite good enough, but it was good enough to have great experiences. But you could see that what you really needed to do was upgrade the hardware just a little bit to make the games that already existed really shine, right? Gran Turismo Sport is a really good example because they couldn't do what they're doing now in Gran Turismo 7, which everybody seems to be saying is like a flagship title for the PSVR 2, because you can do everything in VR in the entire game. First of all, that's not true. You can drive in VR. Everything else is not in VR. It's just on this virtual screen, including your pit stops, including the start, and every race has non-VR in it. And it's kind of jarring the way it goes back and forth.
Interesting.
The PSVR 1 was sort of limited by the hardware and that you couldn't race more than one car, but I still loved it. I loved the experience of it. It worked great with the steering wheel. I think that's where virtual reality shines in general, is any sort of simulation where your interaction is one-to-one. It's one thing to have a wand that sort of simulates, or a controller that simulates what you're doing, but to have a wheel that turns one-to-one, every single angle works right. If you're flying, a joystick and a throttle and stick, everything works, and it looks like what you're looking at. It's a little off, that's okay, but it's close enough that your mind doesn't really know or care about the difference. There is no flight simulator on PSVR2 to date. When y'all talked about it 2 weeks ago, came and said, yeah, you know, if I wanted to go play Super Hot or Beat Saber, that's cool. And I immediately wanted to scream because those two games aren't on PSVR2. They were on PSVR1. Right. That's what I said. Beat Saber is coming. I don't know if it's going to be an upgrade. I don't care. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's not here now. They really screwed up the launch.
I am shocked right now. I would have guaranteed you those two games, Super Hot and Beat Saber, would have been on PSVR 2. That is absurd.
Look at me being wrong for the first time in forever.
Oh, I didn't mean it that way, Cayman. I love you to death, but yeah, you were wrong. Grow up. Roll Tide. Get it right next time. But that's my biggest problem with the PSVR 2. Did you guys see the movie Knives Out?
Yeah, loved it.
Okay. You know the Porsche that the rich billionaire owns on this secluded island that he keeps on the roof of his mansion because there's no roads on the island? That's what PSVR 2 is. It's a gorgeous car that when everybody sees it and goes, you're rich, even if you're not, they think you're rich, and you can't really do anything with it in spite of the fact that it's capable of doing some amazing things. Okay, if you had a private driveway, maybe you could race it up to 100 miles an hour. So you can push the PSVR 2 a little bit, but not nearly what it's designed for, like what it's capable of. And what really bugs me about that is, don't forget, Sony, I thought, learned their lesson with backwards compatibility when the PS4 wasn't backwards compatible with PS3 and all their other titles. They made everything PS5 backwards compatible, right? That makes sense. I get the argument that PSVR 2, it's different. No wonder it's not backwards compatible. You should have known that was coming. This wasn't a surprise. The virtual reality space has all these ubiquitous experiences that are cross VR platforms, right? So Super Hot, you're blown away. You can play that on your phone with, what is it, Cardboard, the Google thing that you just put on your head. You can play that. You can play Quest. You can play it on PC VR. You can play it on Valve Index. You can play it basically everywhere, including PSVR, not PSVR 2. These games really move quickly between VR platforms. And to not be prepared for PSVR 2, what blows me away is what they did so right with PSVR 1. I can't believe it's the same people who screwed this up and nobody seems to notice that it's happening on PSVR 2. There were these demo discs that were great. They had, it's just an experience. Okay, the experience of being in a cage underwater with a shark was rad on a PSVR 1. But to show people it for the first time, isn't that the reason why you developed it for a console in the first place? But now you can do it in 4K instead of this fidelity problem that caused people motion sickness. It was not at a baseline level it needed to be. That's what the PSVR 1. It wasn't there in most experiences. In some of them, it was transcendent. It was brilliant. It was just as good as any other VR experience, and including to date. The problem with the PSVR 2 isn't the hardware. It's better, but nothing's using that. And the state of play that PlayStation didn't exactly show anything that's going to use the PS5 to showcase what it's capable of. Gran Turismo 7 does it, but to be honest, to be completely literal and fair, the experience in Gran Turismo 7 is design-wise identical to Gran Turismo Sport in VR. The fidelity is better. Yeah, you can race more cars, but the truth is, most of the time you're not racing other cars. They're on the track with you, but you're having the same experience, just upgraded, I guess. You're still missing the same in-race data. They didn't change it. You still can't access best lap data, which we use for a racing series every Friday night. So we need somebody who's not in VR to keep scoring. You can't tell what tires anybody else is on or where they're at on the track to plan your pit strategies. And I'm being picky. I'm not trying to say anything other
Well,
than that
you paid $550. I think you
it.
can be picky.
That's another thing that was really weird about the way people perceive PS or PC PlayStation VR2. Excuse me. Look, alone, it's going to pay for itself. I'm in a racing league. We play every Friday night across continental lines. We play with people in Canada and
cool.
in New Zealand. It's great. I love it. But to keep the tracking, we need somebody outside of VR because they didn't change the ability to collect that data in VR. It's that same experience. And I mean that in a good way to PSVR1. PSVR1 was transcendent. It blew everything away. The way the PSVR2 is being reviewed, from what I've heard, is that same thing. And it is not that to me. I love it. And it's not that to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand. You mentioned the price. Why doesn't the PS5 have that? People knocked the PSVR2 down because of the price. Right? It costs too much, so we're going to knock it down a notch. Why wouldn't you do that for the PS5, which requires a TV, by the way? Sure. Like, you have to spend $800 to $1,500 or more to be able to experience it, right? Like,
yeah.
If you want 4K, which I still don't have. So how did you even review this then without spending that extra money? I digress. It's a side effect of, it is a better system, but it has all the same problems with any virtual reality system. Sure. And the cable is the ultimate outlier. It's this tether that doesn't need to be there. The only reason why you have a tether is to produce the best possible technological experience, right? Who makes the best games? Who is the best-selling console right now? We all know the truth. Just say it.
I mean, it's mostly the Switch.
It's Nintendo Switch. Would anybody, by any metric, say the Nintendo Switch is the most powerful thing you can buy out there to play video games on?
Absolutely not.
So it's not the point, right? It's all about software. It is entirely about software. That's what the PSVR 1 had. That's what backwards compatibility would give you. What's really frustrating to me is the PSVR doesn't even have, the PSVR 2, excuse me, doesn't even have like this upgrade in sensibility. Like, when you turn it on, you go through the motions of setting it up, and then you're immediately staring at a giant virtual screen. You're not in a virtual space, where you're not in virtual reality.
Interesting.
You're just looking at a screen. Every other system right now has that. If you buy a standalone MetaQuest 2 or the MetaQuest Pro, any of those systems, you're in a virtual space looking at a menu. It's all intuitive, but you feel like you're in a virtual space.
Yeah.
You're going to a new world. Of course, it has no problem producing that stuff, right? In 4K even. It's like they just forgot the simplest things. It's owning that Porsche in Knives Out and not even having a fucking driveway to race it on. Nothing.
So this has all been, I'm a bit shocked, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
But my first question is, so you've talked about Gran Turismo. What all have you played on it so far in the few weeks that you've had it?
I've done a lot of testing, including the PSVR 1 on a PS5, which is interesting.
Okay.
Sony, they gave me a free adapter, and I had to apply for it way before the PSVR 2 even was released. And I got it for free in the mail, and it works just fine. Like, it's really interesting the way that Sony has been deliberate about supporting the virtual reality space. Originally, it was titled Morpheus, which I just thought was a great name, right?
It's a cool name.
The PSVR looked great. The PSVR used these Move controllers that you could use for more than just virtual reality. And I thought a lot of people complained that the tracking wasn't that great. Okay, we can update that. You can track your phone better now because the system itself has infrared cameras on it. You know, the reviews say the pass-through is black and white. It is black and white, but technically it's infrared. So if you look at your phone screen, you'll see a red light blinking, a white light, I should say, of course, all the time when your screen is off. It's just blinking when you're looking at it through the PSVR 2. There's this ability to change what you do with it that they just completely ignored. And I can't really understand how they missed the mark there, because the support for the PSVR 1 was so deliberate and clearly deliberate, right? They talked about it when they were talking about the PS5. Do you guys remember this press conference? I can't remember his name. The guy who looked like Dana Carvey with the glasses. And they
Oh
talked about the
God,
read
yes,
write. You remember that, right?
yes.
The read
What was
write
his
times
name,
with the
Patrick?
hard drive.
Man,
The
if you
hard
had
drive
asked me, I
stuff.
could have said.
That was the most boring. That was the most boring thing I've ever sat through.
Really, I was fascinated by it.
Mark
Of course
Cerny.
you were. Of course you were.
I'm
Mark Cerny
old
is who
and
we're thinking of.
slowly dying.
Yes,
right?
Mark Cerny. Yeah.
He talked about deliberately the 3D audio system, which was sort of designed for virtual reality rather than explicitly designed for virtual reality. But they everything anybody ever says about the haptics on the DualSense PS5 controller, that came from virtual reality, from PSVR 1. They wanted that for PSVR 2, so they developed it. Now, mind you, it's a different motor system for PSVR 2 versus the DualSense, but it was designed and explicitly made for this experience. I wish we were just talking about delays. I swear to God, I mean, and I hate to say this, I wish PSVR 2 had been delayed for them to get this software shit right and make it a mass market product from the very moment you push start, because it's a console system based enterprise for virtual reality.
Sure.
It's the most ubiquitous and streamlined system that you can buy for virtual reality, and it still feels like a fucking computer.
It's shocking to me because that's always been the thing that has set PlayStation apart from its lead competitor, Xbox. Obviously, Nintendo is the best. It's on its own island, but it's always been the war between Sony and Microsoft. And the thing that so many people, myself included, in high school, I was an Xbot. And that's just because what we had. Like my folks got us an Xbox 360, so I was like, Xbox is the best. And then I found podcasts, and I'm listening to video game podcasts, and I'm hearing about these games like Uncharted and God of War, these games that I just like had kind of missed the ball on. And suddenly I'm looking at all of these titles that I can't play on an Xbox. And what did it do? It got me to go on eBay and buy a PS3 used that then died a month later. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go buy a new one because I want to play these games so badly. And it's always been their thing. It's the thing that sets PlayStation apart from Xbox. Xbox has Game Pass. They have a great library that you can get for $15 a month. Sony has God of War. It has The Last of Us. It has Ratchet and Clank. It has Spider-Man. I can go on and on and on. And for the fact that the PSVR 2 doesn't lean into that is mind-blowing to me.
So I guess my question is, so I'm curious. I wonder if the reason that we are where we are, right, is because Sony doesn't want to take like their mainline developers, people like Guerrilla, people like Insomniac or Naughty Dog, and they don't want them to jump in to be like, we want you to dedicate a AAA's game's worth of time, energy, and money to develop games that are for, and no offense to Gray, but like a select group of people. Let's be honest. I can't physically afford to go out and get a PSVR 2 right now. And, but like one of the reasons I would be more enticed to is if there was experiences. Sure, we do have Call of the Mountain, which was kind of like they're like the main release. It was like, this is the game you have to play. But then reviews came out and it was like, this game kind of is all right. It's fine.
I think the reviews were favorable. I love Horizon. I think as a virtual reality experience, it's really great because it's a branded experience that you recognize. You kind of give it a little bit more push. I have no problem with that. It's a nice little vitamin. What Horizon does is this focus system where you have an augmented reality, an AR in the video game world all the time. It's integrated with the narrative, and it's not present in this flagship launch title that you're charging $60 for. That is a first party exclusive.
What?
Again, it feels like they missed it. Oh, it's a climbing simulator. I don't even have a problem with that. Well, you're not Aloy, so you don't have a focus. Okay, without spoiling the results of a 6-year-old game to date, the sensor, it's not exactly uncommon. They have thousands of them, long story short. So that's not the problem, to give somebody in this game world a focus where you can create an AR inside VR. Again, they missed the mark.
That is absurd.
It's not like a hardware limitation. This is a choice that they missed. Simple as that.
I didn't do a lot of watching of gameplay or anything like that, because one, I do kind of get a little queasy when I watch other people doing VR, not so much when I'm doing it myself. So I didn't really watch stuff. I would have thought that was a slam fucking dunk that a lot of this game is around a focus. I'm like kind of speechless right now to learn that is not part of the Call of the Mountain.
You know what
Isn't that
grills
weird?
me?
That is
You know what
weird.
It would
burns
be
me
something
up?
that everybody would be talking about, or a RoboCop game, which they're developing, by the way. But I have no idea and don't expect it to be developed this way. But to create an AR and VR is one thing. It would be great. To create it from Horizon, it is so integral to the game, and like I said, the narrative itself.
Right.
How did they screw? How did they miss? How did somebody not go? Are you guys not gonna do the focus? Like, really?
You know what?
Okay.
What burns me up? What burns me up the most, I think, from this conversation, isn't that PSVR2 exists, but that Sony has put so much emphasis on VR being like the next big thing. When if you look over at Nintendo, they are fucking crushing it right now with the Switch, and we can't get a Vita 2. That it was
Sure.
like, look, instead of supporting PlayStation VR in the first place, we're just gonna make a new one. Hope people line up in droves to get it. Then there was also the issue where, from my understanding, is like the supply of them is very limited as well.
It's not, by the way, they didn't run out of pre-orders. It wasn't like the PS5. And to your point, though, I'm trying to figure out, honestly, I mean this sincerely, maybe they were trying to get the fire burning, so to speak, right? Because they knew these supply problems were going to be bigger than they expected. I don't know. Something about all of this doesn't make sense. I say something, a lot of it, an awful lot, including the very initial experience for every PSVR2 owner, feels like a missed opportunity at best. And I still love it. For Gran Turismo 7, it really is amazing. But again, that's specific. To build a a virtual reality system for a console, you're trying to deliberately make it for the masses. That's what it felt like they did for PSVR 1. It came with Astrobot, which was incredible. I didn't know what Astrobot, I didn't care before. The PSVR made Astrobot something that I cared about in the way that the Heart Box was in Portal, right? Yeah. Like, it just came out of nowhere. Now I love it. I can't wait to see it again. Can't even test it. The reality of not having a backwards compatible catalog is something I can swallow in spite of spending a fortune on PSVR 1 for a library that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah.
I can get it, but I really kind of don't. I don't understand how they were okay with not making that a priority, because that was where Sony... There was a game called Blood and Truth, and we were talking before about delays. There was Until Dawn: Rush of Blood, and the sequel, the sort of spiritual sequel, comes out this week, right? It was delayed back in January, which wasn't that long ago. It's called, what's it called? Why can't I remember? Switchback VR, excuse me. Like, there's a Switchback non-VR? No, there isn't. And it's derivative, but I'm excited about it. It's horror-based. It's going to be scary. It's going to use the 3D auto really well. Yeah. Your controllers, all of that stuff in a way that I can't test. And I still can't. To not have a single flight sim on any virtual reality sim at launch, it doesn't... I cannot, in case you can't tell, I'm flabbergasted. I really can't believe Sony, because of what they did with the PS Pro, because of the support that they were showing and the money and everything they did around the PS5 to try to support virtual reality, isn't there at launch is baffling.
Here's a question. There's a game that I recently learned about. I think they actually showed it at that most recent State of Play. I think if it wasn't that one, it's the one before. Before Your Eyes. Is it? Have you played that? Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. Guess what? I played a long time ago with a webcam. Okay, it's not a new experience.
Sure.
Alumet is a really nice narrative experience that's in VR that isn't unique to PlayStation, that isn't there. There are so many. Look, everybody's glossing over. Oh, there's 40 titles, Gray. What the hell? Grow up. You're rich. You have a PSVR 2. What? Shut up. Like, really? This should be something for everybody. I'll give you a better example. YouTube TV, not YouTube TV, YouTube, just YouTube has a 360 virtual video it's built in to the system where you can watch it in every other virtual reality system but PSVR2. That's something where you can take to a classroom and take your kids to the Louvre and show them around, or watch an NFL game from field level in 180 degrees, or watch a rhinoceros on the Serengeti. And it sounds geeky and stupid. That's not what VR is about. I'm like, well, then why did you make it for a console system, right? Why did you make it? Like, in all sincerity, roll tide to my brother Bennett out there. Part of me right now wishes I'd spent that money on a PS5 for him to be playing games with him on the internet instead of waiting for something else while I play Gran Turismo 7 every Friday.
Yeah.
The software is a huge, entirely ubiquitous mist. Superhot VR is on every platform. Look, what you need to understand first about virtual reality in general is there's two systems. Oh, no, there's way more. No. They work in two different ways, inside out or outside in. Outside in is when you have a camera and you have to dedicate lights to tracking your system, right? That's outside in. That's what PSVR1 was. Inside out is your camera is attached to whatever system you're using to track where your devices are and where you are in a relative space for 3 dimensions. That's what PSVR2 is. Okay, why are these games on every other system that's ubiquitous to VR and not on PSVR2? The system can handle it. Not just handle it, but maybe even make them shine. And instead, what we get is Horizon, where we climb a lot and you don't have focus. Gran Turismo 7, which is great, but really just a graphical fidelity upgrade from the exact same design-wise experience as Gran Turismo Sport that we've been playing for over 3 years. I'm trying to remember what's another launch title that makes sense like that? It is hugely. Something went wrong.
Something we've talked about on the show. You kind of mentioned earlier was, there's like 40 titles, but of the 40 titles, only like 4 or 5 of them are new games. Not new to PSVR2 because all of them are new to PSVR2, just new games. Everything else is ports. So the one thing that
it's worse though. Some of the ports, like No Man's Sky, which I love, the resolution has not been updated. So you've got a 4K display, but in the distance, I go, what the hell is wrong? Why does it look like square garbage for things that I'm trying to scan in the distance? Now it's cool. Instead of pushing a button to scan, you touch the side of your visor. Like it can detect that. It's very intuitive, but the graphic fidelity, I expect it to be there later because it's not pushing the PS5 right now. I know it's a really intense game, but that's not the issue. Don't forget, the only real difference, the PSVR 1 and PSVR 2, and if you didn't know, they have a 90 hertz to 120 hertz refresh rate. That's super high.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It just had a lower resolution. The PSVR 1 was basically 1080p, and the PSVR 2 is 4K. So what are we missing for these experiences to not be better? It does help inescapably with motion sickness to people who are prone to it. Again, the PSVR 1 was just not ready. It wasn't what I would call a baseline for an industry standard for virtual reality. PSVR 2 is way ahead of that. Again, like the Porsche. You don't need to have a car that can go 200 miles an hour to sit on your roof. It's not doing the most basic stuff.
Sure.
I used to use my PSVR 1. My girlfriend would be watching the one television we had, and I would lay on the couch and watch a movie on a giant virtual screen staring up at the ceiling because I didn't need a TV. You should be able to do the same thing with the PSVR 2, and you can to a certain degree. But those systems, Netflix, Hulu, they were supported. They're not there now. YouTube, how did they miss that? How is 360 video not something that we're all showing off in 4K? Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
The one thing that fills me with hope is that it seems like as you've said, the hardware is there. It's the software. So hopefully in 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 12 months, you'll be singing a different tune because you'll have a library. But what I will say is, as someone who, I didn't regret buying PSVR 1, but because of my experience with PSVR 1, I was not I wasn't planning on buying PSVR2 at the beginning. Now I am certainly not planning on buying it anytime soon. I will be waiting for there to be more software, because that's the reason you buy it, right? Is the software. And if that's not there, then and then it's like it's a circular issue. Well, if I'm not going to buy it, I'm sure there are other me's out there. So does that mean it's not going to be supported? I don't know, but that's Sony's problem. That's not my problem.
If it was backwards compatible, I would be an a-hole. Cayman, you would hate how much I'm begging you to get a PSVR2 right now to play Rec Room, like to just play disc golf inside of a game. Like, it's dumb how much fun we were able to have at a very rudimentary level on PSVR1 that's just gone on PSVR2. And again, it's ubiquitous across all other virtual reality systems. Like, you're not pushed. The whole idea of the requirement of having a plug into a console like the PS5 means, like you mentioned, Patrick, like, okay, in 6 months to 12 months, we'll have more experiences. The idea behind needing a PS5 level experience, if they were going to have, for example, that big of a title, a Call of Duty, right? Or something that big, that would be transcendent, that would be something to sell it behind, or NCAA football, God forbid, something. First of all, they would have announced it. You don't keep that a secret. You can develop it forever and trickle down sales for the system in the meantime. I have not seen announcements like that. The state of play was just last week. They showed 5 games. The first 5 games were virtual reality games for the PSVR2, and they looked like any other experience I've ever had on PSVR1 or PCVR.
They all look like the same game.
They didn't look like, oh, this is why I got a PS5 so I can do VR and this kind of thing. Like, not at all. Not at all. And I bring it up because we've seen it done in PCVR with these other games. We were talking about Resident Evil. There's been modders making this work for PCVR for years. You can play every Half-Life game, Portal. You can play every Resident Evil game and the remakes in virtual reality. And it's bigger than you could possibly expect. And a PS5 can do all of that and more, right? It's a super powerful, impressive system that's streamlined and doesn't have these issues, because that's what they did so great with making it a console. But there's no software. There's no road to drive it on. It's mind-boggling. I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm speechless, obviously. I just can't believe it. The PSVR1 blew me away. That's what I'm the opposite from you. It made me compelled to want to get a PSVR2. Mind you, just Gran Turismo 7 was enough for me. That is very specific. Everybody else grading it on everything else, and it is not even, again, like I mentioned, it's not perfect in Gran Turismo 7 either. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's still great, but I can't. If it was backwards compatible, I would be an asshole about telling people to get it. Like, it's worth it. Try it. It's going to grow. I know it's going to grow. I think it's going to grow because of what they did last time. I don't know who to tell at all. I don't even know who to show this to right now. It's great because you can take it to somebody's house and plug one plug in if they have a PS5 and show it to them. I'm not compelled to do that. I took a flight with the PSVR1 and all those stupid cables. Guess what? Cables they're labeled with numbers, you dummies. Like, it wasn't that complicated to plug the thing in and figure it out. Oh, it was cumbersome, but I had it in a corner. I had a dedicated VR space. So once it was set up, I didn't need a TV. I didn't need to care about that stuff. For racing, you've seen racing rigs. They're furniture now. I don't need all that stuff. It doesn't need to be in front of a TV. For me, doing it in VR is way less hassle than moving my desk, lowering the monitor, and getting everything lined up right just for this racing experience. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It's so much easier. And you had that ubiquity in PSVR1 that just doesn't translate. And I can't believe it. I just can't believe they screwed it up.
I can't believe it either, Gray. But I definitely want to bring you back on soon, or maybe not soon, but whenever we have more games, because I want to see if your song has changed at all. Because
it's Thursday. I'm really excited about Switchback.
I love Rush of Blood, but what I want is a reason to go get it, and I'm not hearing that reason yet, but I hope to hear it soon. But thank you for enlightening us of all of your PSVR2 hands-on impressions.
I feel guilty. I love PSVR1 so much. I really just wanted to be the asshole who was just, I got it at launch. you guys have got to get it. I wish we'd
Yeah.
have gotten it at launch. It's just not what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's not.
Damn.
Well, it might turn into that in the future. And speaking of the future, let's talk about the future for a show that we've all Gray. You've not watched the entire season, but you've played the games, like you know how the game ends.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, to be fair, I think it's close enough. You're not going to spoil anything for
Right.
me. I've just been kind of soaking it in. Yeah.
Right. We got some news today, and so to start out with, I don't believe we will going into spoilers. I will try to make it clear if we start spoiling things, because we do have some folks out there who have not played
about the happy ending.
But what I'm going to pull from first is a story from GameSpot by way of GQ. If you're interested in the show, if you've been loving the show, if you love the games, there's a great interview right now on GQ with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. GameSpot has pulled some nuggets from that I want to talk about. So this is Eddie McCuchet at GameSpot by way of GQ. Writer Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann have teased the upcoming second season of the hit HBO series The Last of Us. In an interview with GQ, Mazin said the hope is the same for the first season, and that is to make the best show possible, even if some people don't like it. Mazin and Druckmann also strongly teased that there will be a third season of the series. It's understood that The Last of Us Season 2 will cover at least some of the events of the second video game, but when asked if Season 2 will span the entire course of the sequel, Mazin said no way. Druckmann, for his part, said it's more than one season, but Mazin wouldn't confirm if it'll be 2 or 3 seasons long. However, we won't say how many seasons it's going to be, Mazin said. He previously talked about how the aim for The Last of Us is to not overstay its welcome. Quote, there are going to be some things that are going to be different, and there are going to be some things that are going to be identical to the game, Mazin said. There are things that are going to be added and enriched. There are some things that are going to be flipped. Our goal remains exactly what it was for the first season, which is to deliver a show that makes fans happy. We've got an incredible returning cast. It's a daunting task, but Jesus, so was the first season. You can't make everyone happy, but we've made a lot of people happy, and that's our intention to do it again. And then they go on to talk about they don't care if people are pissed at the actual story. They just want them to have an opinion on it one way or the other. But as I said, go read the interview. But my question to you both, and again, we're going to try to keep it as spoiler free at the beginning, but at some point we're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. There is a huge component to season or to part 2 of the game around time. And they've already said, which I think is a great thing, that season 2 or part 2 again, rather, will not be one season. It will be more than one season. So my question is, how close do we think that they are going to stay to the time thing? Because there is at least 3 times more story from a writing perspective. If you were to probably compare scripts, it's probably like 10,000 more pages than the first game, because there's just a 10-hour game became a 30-hour game.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot more there. It's just a much bigger story to be told. Setting that aside, there's a huge time component. So I'm all of that to say, I'm curious what we think we're going to see. Do we think they'll go a chronological route? Do we think they'll just stick to it as best as they can and just split it where it makes sense? Cayman, let's start with you. Where's your head at for season 2 of The Last of Us?
I feel like it's difficult to really talk about this without spoilers, so I'm going to do my best here. Okay. So I feel like the way that for it to work, like you could do it non-chronologically and do it 2 seasons. Like, it's possible. There's so much here. It is possible that you could do it. My biggest thing is like some of the bigger story beats are things that, like, I'm just not sure if that works in the way that a TV show works. Like, if we're having some of the biggest story beats in part 2 work because it's a video game. But when you have like real life actors on screen, that is very, very, very difficult to do when you're selling it based on the actors, right?
For sure.
Which is, I mean, in a video game, sure, you're selling it on like, oh, there's Joel, oh, there's Ellie, oh, there's, Nate and Uncharted, oh, there's Kratos and God of War, there's Master Chef, we got this. We know. I mean, well, I'm making a crack at that because that just sucked. But like, so the thing is like but when you have real life characters, real life actors embodying these roles, a lot of this, to me, you're selling a lot of this based on the people who are starring in it. And for the way that the story is structured in the game compared to a TV show, I really feel like if you're going to do it justice, you need to have the emphasis for the third season being based on the way that you end season 2. And so I feel like there's one distinct moment in The Last of Us Part 2 that like I
Strip it
don't
off. Let's just go into spoiler territory.
Joel dies, guys. I don't know if you know that. Joel dies. And he dies within
What?
the first, like 2 hours of the game. And the game's like almost 30 hours long. So with that being said,
I
like
can't believe you said that.
I don't think this works. I'm sorry. I don't see this working as a TV show. People are coming back because they love Pedro. But the draw for them to come back for season 3 won't be because they're like, oh, I'm here because I want to see what happens to Abby. I want to see what Ellie does. What brings them back for season 3 is like, Ellie is killing Abby. Ellie is hunting this bitch down and ending her life. I'm coming back for season 3 to get my own revenge. We haven't had enough time with Joel on screen, for me at least, for me to think as a viewer, right? Not as someone who's not played the game, but someone who is just experiencing it from the lens of like, I'm watching this real life and for the first time ever, right? You killed Joel at the end of season 2. I don't know how you make it work. I don't even give a shit at this point. They did an amazing job with season 1. I know they can make this work. But like, if you killed Joel at the end of season 2, then season 3, now you have all of these people who are infuriated because it ends on the cliffhanger of Joel dying, and they are locked in to see how this ends.
Oh my God. Yeah.
If I feel like if they can manage that, if they can pad out an entire, even if they do 9 episodes again, hell, even if they drop it to like 8 episodes to get us to a point where, as you said, something that happens within the first hour and a half, 2 hours of part 2 of the game, if we can get there to the end of season 2, then I would think it's got to be a 3-season show. And I don't think they're going to go the route of splitting the game in, well, it's not even in half, but it's like it's in thirds, but the first third and the second third are like a lot bigger than the last third. Because I don't think that that works for television. I don't think you can have a whole season from Ellie's perspective and then a whole season from Abby's perspective and then like wrap it up at the end. I just don't think that works. But I do. I mean, I feel like if you do it at the end of episode 1, as we, if you follow the show on Twitter, they announced that the viewership episode by episode, the finale had its most viewers at like release of like 8.7 million or something like that. It was something in the 8s, but it was the highest number so far other than episode 5, but that they didn't count that because that was like a 3-day weekend thing. And so if you rip that Band-Aid off at the end of episode 1 or even at the end of episode 2, I think that 8 million drops pretty considerably. Yeah. Gray, what do you think?
I think it's something that they can sort of play around with as long as they don't sort of lose the general tone and understanding of the basic story, which is pretty basic when you think about it from beginning to end, right? Sure. I mean, these major things happen, but there aren't even that many. Versus where you look at like the Star Wars, the trilogy sequels or whatever, where Luke becomes Morrissey on a rainy Sunday day. Like it's not the same. I just finished the episode with Nick Offerman playing Bill, which obviously that was not in any part in the game at all whatsoever.
Right.
That character didn't exist. The episode was almost entirely dedicated to him and his partner. And I'm trying not to cry right now just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was powerful. It was storytelling that fit within the world without trying to change everything. You were mentioning how long it takes. If it's 12 hours, it's a good experience in VR, like we were just talking about with the Horizon game. This is 10 hours roughly for one season. If you're playing a video game, it's because you're repeating things and you're dying a lot and things like that. So it doesn't need to be the same length. To fill an entire episode with something that didn't exist sounds like it shouldn't work. It didn't just work. I think it made it better.
Yeah.
When they're this good at storytelling, I think it's okay to kind of lean into the concept of maybe they'll just surprise us rather than hopefully they don't screw it up, right? That's kind of where I'm at. To be like perfectly honest, this series, I mean, think about it. The Last of Us was not just a video game, but a video game on one system that not everybody played, that wasn't for everybody. It was always a mature title, that sort of thing. And they made it into a show with an Academy Award winner. Nick Offerman, arguably his best performance to date, some people are saying. I'm not sure that's fair, but it was pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They've sort of earned my benefit of, I think all of our benefit of the
100%.
doubt. Like, to the point where I want to be like, you know what? Last of Us episode 2, so to speak, make it 4 seasons. Like, if you can do it this good, I don't care. Take your time.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Like, there were things that I never lost faith in this season, but there were things where I was like, this is a really interesting change and I can't wait to see what happens. And every time I loved it. Like, I think it's one of my favorite seasons of television I've ever watched, which obviously I have the bias of The Last of Us being my favorite game of all time. And these are two of my favorite characters in any medium, but I definitely, I trust them to adapt this in whatever way makes the most sense. And I'm sure they will succeed. It's just, it is quite the bigger nut to crack, I think, for part 2 than part 1. And
it's
so
going to be a beast.
Yeah, it's going to be a beast for sure.
Like, I mean, the way that they, I mean, like you said before, the way it's split up, and it's like, it's like what, 40%, 40%, 20% is probably the way it's split between Ellie, Abby, and then 20%.
I would even say like 45, 45, 10, honestly.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So like, I don't think that you could do an entire season based on 10%.
Yes.
But I also don't think that people would be as interested in watching, and maybe I'm wrong, but like, I don't see people being as interested in watching, like, the first season is like, you know, is all of Ellie's story. And then 90% or 60%, let's say, is Abby's story of season 3. And then the last chunk is you're back with Ellie.
Yeah.
I don't think that it doesn't make sense like that. So I think the way that, for me, is that we have time jumps in between both of them leading up to the big season finale, which is like, we get a lot of, like, we get Abby's pre-story and we get episodes dedicated to like just Abby, or we have like an episode that's just like Abby with her dad who dies in the hospital. Joel shoots him and we get the close-up shot. So I can see like the first episode of the season being like, you know, them probably have already, they've probably already shot the first episode of the season while Bella Ramsey still looks young. But, you know, also there's the other aspect of like Bella Ramsey has to, I mean, sure, they've de-aged her in the show a bit by like using like almost like a corset to like, or chest bindings, I think she said.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And there's other things that they've done to make her look younger. But like, you know, she has to age up a bit for them to do some of the other stuff. But like, I really do think like the way that, for me in my head, the way that this works the best is for them to drag this out where it's kind of like a back and forth early up into that big moment.
Sure.
And you have the big moment, and that's when you end on a huge cliffhanger. And people, because the thing is, if you get a full season with more Ellie, more Joel, and then you start getting they're trickling in Abby, and you're like, who is this? How is she playing into the story? What is going on here? And then like the big reveal is like, oh, Abby, that was her dad. Is the doctor. Yeah. And then you have the big reveal at the end of that season. And then so let's say you do 8 episodes for season 2, and then you do 10 episodes for season 3. And then Joel comes back in, because they did it in the game where like Joel plays, like, there's moments where she sees Joel, where he'll like come and talk to her and stuff like that. Like, you can still bring him back in. That emotional gut punch in the game can still come through in television. But I don't think that like an average TV viewer who's never played the game will have that same level of connection or attachment to Joel if you kill him in episode 1 or episode 2 of season 2, and then you have another full season and another like season and 3/4 left to like go through. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But like but at the same time, like, I would love to see how they turn this. Like, I think that there's a lot of leeway that they can play with. That's sure it's going to piss people off regardless. Like, that's the whole thing. It pissed people off when they played the game. There's still people who are furious about the way the last one. That's what I was going to say.
Dude, we all did play through it. Like, we didn't understand it at first, and people were complaining about it before they finished the game. And we finished it, man, because the storytelling was that good, dude. Where they could basically do the worst possible thing you could ever imagine them doing, and you're still literally compelled to keep playing. I see no reason why they can't do that with the TV show.
Oh, for sure.
I really, and that means it's just exceptional television, right? I mean, it's really, really good storytelling.
Yeah, the thing I'm most interested to see how they tackle is that turn that I don't want to say we all had, but I think most people had in the game when you're Abby and you start to actually like, wait, do I really like Abby actually, even though I fucking hated her for so long? Like I can't wait to see how that is handled and like what the audience that didn't play the game, like their experience with that. But
they just did that with the Nick Offerman episode, right? For a guy who I had no connection with. And I was immediately like, oh my God, they're kissing, and I'm kind of okay with it. Like, this is really fascinating. And it didn't feel like it was out of the world in spite of the fact that it was never a part of the story. Cayman, you didn't play the games? Is that what you said?
Oh no, I've
he was saying putting himself in the mindset of someone who didn't play the game.
But I could see, like, I think the way that you could do this, I think the way you could do this that would work really well would be if you do have more time with Abby early on, and you all like, you know, you get some really good storytelling moments with her, and you get connected with Abby, and you like really start to really like Abby, and then she does the horrific thing, right?
Sure.
And then you're like, and then you have like that double moment of like, oh, like you just want to fucking lose your shit because you're just like, I liked her and now I absolutely hate her, and then you have to go back to being like, now I have to like her again. This is awful.
Yeah,
everything.
Maybe they will. You know what this feels like? It reminds me of Game of Thrones for people who read the books and kind of knew what was going to happen, and then the show came out, and you're like that a-hole who read the books, right? Now we're the a-holes who played the video game, right? No, you're not alone. But I read them, and I still was blown away by the wedding and the red wedding. Like, there were moments, and they changed so much. To be fair, if they change as much in The Last of Us from the game that they did for the show with Game of Thrones from the books, that's too much. And I don't think they're going to do that. There's no reason to expect it. But
I agree.
We can't. We're the experts now. We can't go back and just tell people, oh, the video game was better. I think it's really interesting to see they're two world-class storytelling experiences.
Yeah.
It feels like it's unique. It feels singular. I wish it was more common than this.
I agree. Well, we're going to get all of these answers and more when the show comes out in approximately 2 years, if we're lucky. But folks, that's our show. Gray, again, thank you for coming on.
Oh my God.
And talking all about, I know you had a bit of a heart attack getting it all to work, but you made it happen.
PC problem.
And I'm thankful for it. But Gray, for the folks at home, if they want to find you, if they want to listen to you, I mean, you do what we do in other areas, in other arenas. So tell the folks at home where they can find you.
You can find me pretty much everywhere it's at Color of Gray. That's Grey. It's Color of Gray Studio on Instagram. We're just starting a new video series and podcast, but it's pretty much based in Greenville, South Carolina, for Greenville, South Carolina. And I came here to do this and run into all these problems, and then to see Cayman's face from filming our first episode. So I don't even know where to tell you to expect it, but it's called The Gray and Jay Show. That's Grey. You will be able to find it everywhere you can get everything else. But more importantly, thank you to Spotlight Games, to Save Trash Cinema. I love you guys. I love listening to what you do. I love being here. I appreciate your patience. I hate that I screwed this up. I've been thinking about VR way too much more than I normally do the past week because of this show. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for coming. Cayman, where can the folks find you, good sir?
You can find me on Twitter at the Dumpster Boy. And you can find Save Trash Cinema at Save Trash Cinema on all socials. We drop new episodes every Tuesday.
Fantastic. And as I said at the top of the show, you can find Spotlight Games on Twitter at SpotGamesPod, or on Instagram and TikTok at SpotlightGamesPod. And if you're already here in the Twitch chat, you know where you can find us on Twitch, and that is twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. Every episode, every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, roughly. And it'll hit your podcast services and your YouTube feed every Thursday at 8 a.m. So until next time, thank you for playing. We'll talk to you later.